Your car feels solid, right? You change the oil, you check the tires. But deep inside its steel and plastic, a clock is ticking.
Microscopic cracks are growing with every pothole, every cold start, every single heat cycle. The Society of Automotive Engineers reports that
Material fatigue is a factor in over 80% of all mechanical failures. I've torn down over 5,000 engines in my career.
And trust me, the patterns are always the same. They start silent, they end with a bang.
Today, we're counting down the 7 microcracks that are about to total your car. And the #1 failure on this list?
It gives you almost no warning before it turns your engine into 1,000 pounds of scrap metal.
Number 7. The ozone-checked tire sidewall.
Ever glance at your tires and see a web of tiny, shallow cracks, especially near the rim? You might think it's just cosmetic aging.
But that's not dirt. That's the rubber literally unzipping at the molecular level. Here's the thing. Rubber is made of long polymer chains, and ozone in the air is like a tiny pair of scissors that loves to snip them apart.
Every day, sunlight and pollution attack your tire's sidewall, creating these micro fissures.
It looks like dry, weathered skin, and it feels just as brittle. The tire isn't just getting old.
It's losing the flexibility it needs to handle the massive forces of driving. Department of Transportation studies on tire aging confirm
That after 6 years, the risk of a catastrophic failure skyrockets, even if the tread looks perfect.
we see tires come in with deep tread, but the sidewalls feel chalky and stiff. That's a ticking time bomb.
Ignoring it costs you nothing, until it costs you everything. A slow leak might just be a $25 patch.
But when that crack deepens, it becomes a sudden highway speed blowout. That's $800 for new tires.
Plus thousands in body damage, or worse. The fix is simply replacing your tires based on their date code.
Not just their tread depth. Seen those cracks on your own tires? Tell me their age in the comments.
Number 6. The compressed suspension bushing. Notice a tiny vibration in your steering wheel on a smooth road? A slight clunk when you turn into a driveway.
That isn't your alignment. It's the sound of your suspension slowly turning to stone.
Here's the thing. Those rubber bushings in your control arms are designed to absorb road shock.
But after 100,000 cycles of heat and pressure, they take what's called a compression set.
They permanently deform and harden. They stop absorbing shock and start transmitting every tiny road imperfection straight into your chassis.
You feel it as a jolt, and you hear it as a dull thud. It feels like the car is suddenly loose, less connected to the road.
Testing from parts manufacturers like Moog shows a standard rubber bushing loses over 60% of its flexibility in just 5 years.
We put a new one next to an 80,000-mile original.
The old part was visibly flattened, riddled with cracks, and felt as hard as a hockey puck. It starts as a clunk that costs you nothing. Ignore it, and you're looking at a $150 alignment that won't hold.
Followed by $800 for a set of unevenly worn tires. The catastrophic cost. Your car becomes dangerously unstable.
In an emergency swerve, we see reports of cars spinning out in the rain because a single compressed bushing lets
the wheel alignment shift under load, causing a total loss of control. I keep a note of these sounds.
On my toolbox, do you? Because we're now crossing from annoying noises into seriously expensive repairs. Number 5. The cracked exhaust manifold.
Hear a rhythmic tick-tick-tick from the engine bay when the car is cold, but it fades as it warms up.
That's not a noisy valve. That's a crack in your cast-iron exhaust manifold breathing hot gas where it shouldn't. Here's the thing. Your exhaust manifold is bolted to your aluminum cylinder head, but they're 2 different metals that expand at wildly different rates.
Every heat cycle is a tug of war. The heavy cast iron eventually fatigues and a hairline crack forms, usually near a bolt hole.
Or in a sharp casting corner. When it's cold, the gap is open, letting exhaust pulses escape with a sharp tick.
As it heats up, the metal expands and seals its own crack, making the noise disappear.
You can often smell a faint puff of raw exhaust if you're standing near the front of the car on a cold start.
Aftermarket suppliers like Dorman have built entire product lines around replacing these because they fail so often.
It's a guaranteed failure point on hundreds of popular engines. At first, it's just a noise.
Ignore it, and you're failing emissions tests for a $100 retest fee. The real fix is a $700 manifold replacement.
But if you wait too long, the leaking hot gas can break the mounting studs off in the cylinder head,
Turning a simple job into a $2,000 nightmare of drilling and tapping.
Ever chased a phantom tick? Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next diagnosis.
Number 4. The warped plastic intake manifold.
Feel a slight loss of power? Your fuel economy drops by a few miles per gallon? Maybe you notice a high, wandering idle after you get off the highway. Trust me, it's not in your head.
Here's the thing. That big plastic manifold sitting on your engine goes from freezing cold to over 200 degrees Fahrenheit every time you drive. This constant thermal cycling causes the polymer to slowly warp, especially around the flat sealing surfaces.
A tiny, invisible gap opens up. It's a vacuum leak. Your engine is breathing air the computer can't see. Sometimes with a faint hiss, you can barely hear over the engine. It throws off the entire fuel mixture.
NHTSA has thousands of complaints on file for this, especially on workhorse engines like the Ford 4.6L V8.
We laid a machinist's straight edge across a manifold from a 120,000-mile Crown Victoria. You could slide a credit card right under the gap. That tiny smile was the whole problem. First, you lose 3 miles per gallon, hundreds of dollars a year in wasted fuel. Then comes the persistent check engine light.
And a $150 diagnostic fee. The part itself can be a $900 replacement. And the catastrophic failure.
The engine runs so rich trying to compensate that it melts the inside of your catalytic converter, a $2,500 repair.
All from a tiny warp in a piece of plastic. A permanent fix is often an aftermarket aluminum intake from a brand like Edelbrock.
Tap like if you've ever chased a mystery check engine light.
Number 3. The cracked cylinder head.
Are you constantly topping off your coolant but you can't find a leak? See a puff of sweet-smelling white smoke.
From your exhaust on startup? That's not morning condensation. That's your engine drinking its own coolant.
Here's the thing. A single overheating event can be a death sentence for your cylinder head. The aluminum gets so hot, it anneals.
It softens and warps. When it cools, it doesn't return to its original shape. This crushes the head gasket, but worse,
It can create micro cracks between the coolant passages and the combustion chamber. Coolant gets burned, and combustion gas gets forced into your cooling system,
creating destructive air pockets. The oil on your dipstick might even look milky, like a coffee milkshake, a terrifying sign.
Head gasket giant Felpro's own failure analysis data shows that the vast majority of gasket failures are caused by a pre-existing warped
Or cracked cylinder head, not the gasket itself. Catch it early, and you might get away with a $100 cooling system pressure test.
Ignore it, and you're facing a $2,500 head gasket job. But if the head itself is cracked,
That's a $6,000 repair, often more than the car is worth. This next one is where repairs stop and rebuilds begin.
pay close attention. Number 2. The warped transmission valve body. Feel a sudden bang when the transmission shifts, especially when it's hot? Or maybe a long, lazy shift that feels like the engine is slipping.
That isn't a quirk. That's a cry for help. Here's the thing. The brain of your automatic transmission is the valve body.
A maze of aluminum channels and precision valves. Thermal stress warps the aluminum, causing the valves to bind in their bores.
Hydraulic pressure leaks. Clutch packs engage too slowly, slipping and burning, or too harshly, feeling like you've been rear-ended.
The fluid starts to smell like a swamp fire, and the pan magnets will look like chia pets covered in metallic fuzz.
Leading rebuilders like Sonax publish technical bulletins on this constantly. They've built an entire business selling oversized valves and reaming tools.
Just to fix warped valve bodies. The bang you feel is your clutch plates being hammered to death because a valve was a split second too slow. The cost ladder is brutal. A $250 fluid flush might mask it for a week. The real fix starts at $1,200.
For a remanufactured valve body from a trusted source. But if you ignore it, the slipping clutches contaminate the whole system.
Requiring a full $5,000 rebuild, minimum. Ever felt that harsh shift? Let us know the make and model below.
But even a $5,000 transmission can be replaced. The number one micro crack on our list doesn't give you that option.
Number 1, the fatigued crankshaft.
There might not be a check engine light. It often starts as a new, deep vibration you feel through the floor.
A low hum that wasn't there before. You might blame the tires. You might blame the road. But you're feeling the beginning.
Of the end. Here's the thing. Every single time a cylinder fires, it hits the crankshaft like a hammer.
Twisting it in a motion called torsional vibration. Your harmonic balancer absorbs most of it, but not all. Metal accumulates millions
of these tiny flexes over 100,000 miles. A microscopic crack forms, usually at a high stress point like an oiling hole.
And with every rotation, that crack grows.
Say technical papers are filled with studies on crankshaft fatigue. The warning signs are whispers. That new vibration.
An oil leak from the front or rear main seal that keeps coming back because the crank is starting to wobble.
I sectioned a crankshaft from a 150,000-mile Subaru WRX. Under the microscope, you could see the faint curved beach marks. In the fractured steel, each line showed how far the crack grew with every hard pull. The final piece
that let go was smaller than my thumbnail. The engine went from 6,000 RPM to 0 in a fraction of a second, snapping 2 rods and blowing a hole in the block. The cost? A new harmonic balancer is
$300. Ignoring the wobble and replacing a leaking main seal is an $800 dead end.
The catastrophic failure is a $10,000 engine replacement, if you're lucky enough that it doesn't cause a wreck.
This is the definition of an invisible catastrophic failure. Do not ignore a new vibration.
But you are not powerless. You just have to learn how to see the invisible. Here's how you stay ahead. First, get an infrared thermometer. It's a $20 tool. After a long drive, pop the hood and scan your plastic intake manifold.
A healthy one will be uniform. If you see a hot spot near a mounting bolt, that's a stress riser.
That's where it's trying to warp. Second, listen to your harmonics. Take a long screwdriver, press the handle to your ear,
and touch the tip to the bolt in the center of your main crank pulley. A healthy harmonic balancer has a smooth, steady hum.
If you hear a dull thud, a rattle, or a rhythmic tick, that balancer is failing.
It's no longer absorbing the vibrations that are trying to kill your crankshaft. Finally, use lab data.
An oil analysis from Blackstone Labs is your microscope. For $30, they can tell you what metals are wearing inside your engine.
A sudden spike in iron, chromium, or copper is a direct signal from your crankshaft and bearings that something is wrong.
Long before you can ever feel it. These tiny cracks grow in the dark, fed by heat and vibration.
But by understanding the forces at play, you can turn a $10,000 catastrophe into a manageable repair.
Now that you know how fatigue creates these invisible cracks, the next critical step is managing the heat that causes them.
Watch our cooling system deep dive to stop the domino effect before it starts and save yourself from the most common 4-figure repair we see in the shop.